Hello, my name is Rob Kieboom. I run a small training company in the middle of the Netherlands. I mostly train and coach senior executives of the larger global organizations. Today, I'd like to talk to you about the leadership of Cardano. About 2 years ago, I became interested in the crypto world, and especially in Cardano, because I believe it can be a fair financial system for everybody on this planet, a fair way of voting, and also a great way to guard your identity. I think there's a lot of future for the blockchain industry, and especially for Cardano. Now, Charles Hoskinson is a very intriguing character. He has a lot of haters, he has a lot of fans. Today, I thought it would be an interesting idea to combine two of my main hobbies, Cardano and leadership, and see if I can say something about the leadership of Charles Hoskinson. Now, before I dive into Charles Hoskinson, I'd like to explain the core quality model by Daniel Hoffman to you. It's a model I use a lot with senior executives to make them aware of their strengths, their weaknesses, and their challenges. So the first couple of minutes, I will explain the model, and then I will use the model to analyze Charles. The core quality model has 4 boxes. The first box talks about qualities. The core qualities of a person makes a person special. For instance, decisiveness could be a great quality for a manager. You need somebody who takes decisions. Now, the model also says that if you do too much of your quality, you might end up in your pitfall, in something negative. For instance, if we take the word decisive, too much of it could mean that the person becomes dictatorial or is perceived as dictatorial, which is not a good thing. Another example, sense of humor is great, but if you overdo it, you might become a clown, and that's never beneficial in a company. So all of your qualities, if you do too much of them, they can end up in your pitfall. Humble is a great quality, but if you are too humble, you do too much of it, you might become invisible. The model also works the other way around. People are normally very good in spotting the negatives in people. But if we try hard, we can also translate something negative into something positive, because many times there's something positive behind the pitfall, behind the negative. So for instance, if we look at the word arrogant, well, somebody who's arrogant, that's not a very positive thing, of course, but what might be the positive thing that's behind it? For instance, somebody could be self-confident. If people get self-confident to the level that they're so confident that they look down at everybody else, then they become arrogant. Another example, being negative is not a good quality, but maybe there's a good quality behind it. For instance, being critical. Critical is great because you can spot mistakes, you can help people by that. But if you do too much of it, you become so critical that you're only negative, and that's not a good thing. Now, I like to use the model normally when I coach people is not talking about the pitfalls, but trying to translate them in something positive. So I'm not saying you're such a negative person, but what I admire in you is that you have a critical eye, but sometimes you overdo it and you might be perceived as negative. If you only use it like that, it would not be a good model. You also need to coach people on their challenges. And that's the third box in the model. And the challenge is the opposite, the positive opposite of the pitfall. If I take the word decisive again as an example, too much of it is dictatorial. And the challenge would be the opposite of dictatorial. And that could be, for instance, delegate more. Or maybe listen better to people. It's not like a dictionary. It's not like if the word dictatorial is in the pitfall, then automatically you know the challenge. It could be a number of things. And normally you use a model like this in close communication with the person you coach and see if the person agrees and if the person can help make the model themselves. There's also a fourth box, and it's a little bit different box than the other boxes. The qualities The pitfalls and the challenges are all about you. The allergies are about what you are allergic to in other people. People that are so blah, blah, blah really get on my nerves. Those are your allergies. Your allergy is mostly the positive opposite of your quality, but it's also too much of your challenge. And this is how the model is complete. So what are you allergic to in other people? Also tells me something about yourself, because the opposite of this mostly are your qualities. Now, let's take the word decisive again. Doing too much of it could lead to dictatorial behavior. The challenge could be listen to others or delegate more. But if you do that too much of your challenge, you only listen to others, might mean that you don't make your own decisions anymore. And again, the opposite of not making your own decisions is being decisive. So that is how the model is complete. Now, I like to use this model to look at the qualities, pitfalls, and challenges and allergies of Charles. And I'm very interested, by the way, in your opinion, and I might be totally wrong, and I'm very interested what you have to say. And perhaps Charles Hoskinson will have a look himself, and that will be even more interesting. Now let's look at the quality of Charles. I believe he's very, very passionate. Now, also passionate about Cardano. Can you be too passionate? Well, maybe. Especially what we sometimes see in his AMA sessions is that he's very, very emotional when it comes to trolling. And his passion maybe is a little bit too much then. And he can go on and on and on about the trolls. His challenge there would be maybe to relax a little bit more, to take it easy, to be less upset by these people. There are a lot of people, unfortunately, like this on this planet, people who don't produce a lot themselves, but are very critical on others. So maybe the challenge of Charles would be to relax a little bit more. Now, how does the model work? If he would be relaxing too much, he would become or show inertia, and that will be the opposite of his passion. And that's how the model works. And this is one quality. Let's have a look at another quality. I believe Charles is an optimist. He believes Cardano can be the number one. And he really goes for that. And I'm not saying that's not happening. I hope it's happening. But if you're too much of an optimist, sometimes you might become unrealistic. And as an example, sometimes Charles in the past named certain deadlines that he was not able to keep. Or last week he said that next year there will be more than 1,000 dApps on the Cardano blockchain. Might be realistic, might be unrealistic, but in his optimism, sometimes he goes a little bit too far, according to my belief. So what would be his challenge? To be a little bit more realistic sometimes. Stay an optimist. Don't forget about the optimism. That's a great quality, but balance it with realism. Now, if you're too realistic, sometimes you might end up being a pessimist and only seeing the bears on the road. And that's the opposite again of being an optimist. Let's take a third quality. I think Charles is a risk taker. Well, in his personal life he is, but also he's not afraid to leave Ethereum or to leave Dan Larimer and go his own way when he doesn't agree. So he does take the risk. If you take too much risk, you might become reckless. I didn't see this in his professional life, but I'm sometimes worried in his personal life when I hear him about jumping from mountains or going into ice water with the Dutch guy. So I'm sometimes worried, Charles, don't be too reckless, because we need you still for the future. Challenge would be to keep safety in mind, and I hope he does that. Now, for people who do too much of that, they always avoid risk, and that's again the opposite of the quality. So taking risk, I think it's another quality of Charles. The model also works the other way around. You can start from the pitfalls. Now, some people say that Charles Hoskinson is a bit cocky sometimes. What could be the quality behind it? Well, perhaps he's very confident. Perhaps, well, he's very knowledgeable, and sometimes when he has to deal with people who are less intelligent, he becomes a bit cocky or impatient. maybe the challenge would be in those situations to be a little bit more humble, to be a little bit more patient. Well, when you're so humble that you become shy, of course, then you're in the elegy of Charles. And I don't know if shy people are in his elegy, maybe not, but for the model, that would work. You can also start from the allergies. I believe that Charles Hoskinson is allergic to dishonest people. Now, last week there was an article, The Haskell Elephant in the Room, some of you might have read it, by a guy called Stephen Deal. And I think what he wrote in that article was definitely not fair about the crypto industry as a whole, and also not fair to Cardano when it comes to using Haskell to get a better name. I don't think at all that is what Charles Hoskinson had in mind. So I believe this guy is not fair, is dishonest, and I think that's in the elegy of Charles. What would it say about the qualities of Charles Hoskinson? Well, it would be the opposite. The opposite of dishonest is honest. Is he an honest guy? I definitely believe so. Honest and transparent. Can you be too honest in life? Yes, you can. If you're too honest, you become very blunt, very direct, not very political. Maybe sometimes people are insulted by that, and that can work against you. And sometimes you see that also in Charles's presentations. His challenge would be to be a little bit more political now and again. Of course, not to the level that you do too much of it, because then you're so political that you're not honest anymore and not transparent anymore. So the advice would be, keep your honesty, but sometimes maybe be a little bit more political. What I really like about the guy is that he's still a child in a way. I mean, when he talks about the game, where he bought the rights, I think it's called Legends of Valor, you still see the child. He still likes to play. And that's a great, great quality. Can you do too much of that? Definitely. And for instance, in his enthusiasm and in his sometimes being a child, he talked about fighting Chico Crypto, the big troll. And I think that was not very professional. And a lot of people didn't like that he did that. So the challenge would be in a situation like that, it's great to be a child still, but always stay professional and don't make the mistake to go too far. If you do too much of staying professional, you're a boring, political correct adult. And that's the opposite of the inner child. So please, Charles, stay the child, but always stay professional and don't make mistakes like going into a fight with Chico. It will only be good for the guy, by the way. And he doesn't deserve that. So if I summarize, I mean, there's a lot more to say, but if I look at the qualities, knowledgeable, intelligent, a visionary, being number one in the crypto world, optimism, sense of humor, child is still alive, being very transparent and open, communicating on a very regular basis, and he's the only one in the crypto industry who does that. None of the other CEOs do it. He's honest, he's very enthusiastic, and he's a very hard worker. Pitfalls could be that sometimes he's a bit cocky. He gets very impatient with people who don't have the same level of intelligence. He can be unrealistic sometimes, especially when it comes to deadlines. And his optimism, he is too optimistic. He gets too annoyed by trolls, too emotional there. And then he forgets to be professional sometimes. He can be blunt, direct, and insult people. And he's definitely a workaholic. Challenge could be to be less emotional in these situations, to don't overpromise, to stay professional always. An interesting one for me is he gets a lot of compliments, especially during the Ask Me Anything sessions, but he never acknowledges the compliments. And he always spends a lot of time on the negatives, on the trolls. So for me, it would also be a challenge to concentrate more on the positives and less on the negatives. And a challenge might be to take time for personal life because he works so hard. But then again, when I see the farm and when I hear the stories about the Japanese whiskey and when I see the pictures of the father, I still have the feeling that there is time for the personal life. But I hope he'll manage to keep it like that. Here's allergies, and tell me if I'm wrong. I could be wrong, but I think it's passive people, dishonest people, unfair people, unintelligent people, pessimists, boring people, closed people, and passive I already mentioned. Interested in your views from the Cardano community. So why do I believe Charles Hoskinson is an excellent leader? Well, first of all, he has clear vision. He knows where he's going. He communicates frequently, a couple of times a week at least. Unbelievable that he finds the time and the energy to do it. He's transparent and honest. He's an optimist. He has a great sense of humor. And he's also surrounded by great people, and great leaders are able to surround themselves by great people. So he is surrounded, and I'm sure you know all of these people. This is the wrong slide. By these kind of people. And if you can surround yourself by these kind of people, I mean, it proves that you're an excellent leader. So please let me know what you think. If you agree or you want to add or take some things off the list, I'm interested to hear your opinion. Thank you for your attention.